welcome to the Somewhat Daily Backup. I am your host, Nick Boy Richardson, and I've confused the order in which we start the show because it was sprung on me quite quickly.
Yeah,
it's Monday, the 22nd of March. It's the Somewhat Daily Backup because we come at you somewhat daily every Monday and Wednesday with all the video game news that's fit to talk about. Today I'm joined by Peter Burns.
That's me. I sure am, Peter Burns.
So for those of you watching and not listening on the podcast, an apology for how shit I look. Because my daughter, over the last 3 days, has decided that she just doesn't want to sleep anymore and wakes up at about 1 o'clock in the morning and then goes back to sleep at any point between 2 and 4:30. And the only way at the moment she could go back to sleep, because she's sleeping in a cot in our bedroom, is if we leave the room.
Right.
So we, at 1 o'clock over the last 3 nights, have just woken up, picked up our pillows, and walked out to the living room and both laid down on the couch and fallen asleep on the couch after she stops crying. Yesterday, she didn't stop crying for 3 hours. So I look like absolute garbage because I am so exhausted. But I hope that everyone else is doing well. Peter, are you good this fine Monday morning?
I am. No one woke me up at 1 o'clock in the morning screaming. So I had a very nice night's sleep and I'm feeling very well rested. So looking forward to trying to balance you out here.
Excellent. Someone else who balances us out is someone who is always prepared for the news, and that is the one who brings the Somewhat Daily Backup to you. That's Pocketeer Tim from the Learn Programming Academy. Get your exclamation mark Tims out in the chat, because the Learn Programming Academy offers classes covering the entire range of programming that are easy to watch for all skill levels. They're almost all $20 or less. Tim has taught over 1 million people. Incredible. And I haven't done over 1 million anything.
I reckon there's one thing you've done 1 million of.
I
won't say it on stream, but we all know what it is.
Wait, so I turned 35 this year.
Yeah.
Which is times 365. So I've been alive for 12,000 days.
Yeah.
How many times do you breathe in a day? Do you breathe in a day? 22,000 times. So
okay,
22,000 times 12,000.
I reckon we're under a winner.
Oh, how many zeros is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. I've drawn approximately 264 million breaths.
And that's only the second most thing you've done.
I'm a deviant. Head to lpa.dev/backpocket to download the custom Backpocket info guide on everything Tim has to offer. Become a coding genius you didn't know you were. That's exactly the kind of ad read Tim was expecting when he signed up for this.
Sorry, Tim. Sorry, mate.
Sorry, Tim. You knew what you were getting yourself into.
Absolutely.
What are you getting yourself into? The news. Let's get it underway, because there's a lot to talk about, starting with the Sqaure Enix Presents, which I believe Gus and I spoke about at halfway through last week. As it was coming up towards the end of last week or over the weekend, sort of hypothesizing what we would see, and now we know what we would see, and most of it is not a surprise. The big thing to come out of it, I suppose, is the new Life is Strange game, which is entitled Life is Strange True Colors.
Don't be discouraged.
Good.
That's all I know.
Good. And legally, all you can
sing
sing on stream as well. Life is Strange True Colors will launch September 10th on Google Stadia, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Windows PC, Xbox One, and Series X. The sequel to 2019's Life is Strange 2, True Colors will pull back from its predecessor's episodic format and release its full story on the same date. It stars Erica Mori as Alex Chen, a young Asian American woman with psychic powers who moves to Colorado to discover the truth about what happened to her brother, Gabe. Pete, do you want to find out what happened to Gabe?
I do. This is a good trailer. I like the tweaks to the art style. It looks a little bit, and maybe I'm just like, it's been a while since I saw the original, but it feels a little more stylized. The other one felt like
it does.
It failed to be perfectly realistic, whereas this one feels like it's leaning in a direction. And I think everyone looks really cool. I like that it seems to be more colorful as well. It's playing into the idea of like people's auras giving off a colorful energy that the protagonist can detect.
Yeah, she's like an empath.
Yeah, it looks quite cool. The only thing I don't like about this trailer is I think one of the cards pops up that says, "Use the power of emotion." Here it is.
There it is.
Like that's like the weakest line.
Yeah,
and it describes the game effectively, but it's like, what?
yeah. The power of emotion is
It's an 80s ballad.
Yeah. Totally, yeah. That is a poor descriptive phrase. Yes, it looks pretty cool. I like the fact that it's dropping as one and not episodic. I feel like I think I liked the first Life is Strange, but the rest of them I always just fell off because of the episodic thing. It kind of just I feel like it's quite soft storytelling. And I feel like soft storytelling for me doesn't work when it's spread out over a long period of time. Like I rarely was like, I need to know what happens.
Yeah.
It was often like, oh, yeah, I'll be happy to find out what happens. And so if that feeling of, oh yeah, is spread out over 10 months, then I'm never seeing the end of that story.
I watched Steph play a lot of the first one over her shoulder, and like the thing that stopped me from playing it myself was I saw a bunch of story, but also it just looked a bit like a clunky kind of plotting game in terms of the mechanics.
Yeah.
So like this one could be the right entry one for me, where they've kind of polished the concept a little bit with the couple of runs they've had at it, and visually I find it very appealing. So
yeah, visually
this could be my in for sure.
It's very nice. I do find the game's a little slow, not just in terms of storytelling, but just in terms of like everything about it is very laid back, but that is also the thing I think that a lot of people are drawn to. So I know I've seen a lot of excitement out there for this one. It seems to be mainly positive vibes. So yeah, we'll see more about that when it comes out on September 10th. There's also going to be, they're remastering the old ones and putting them out as well, so you can dive back into some Life is Strange beforehand. But at the Presents, they also spoke about a title that they had announced before under a different name, which was Project Athea. Is it Athea or was it Athea?
Athea.
Athea? One of them.
One of those.
I don't think anyone ever said it out loud.
No.
So
they saw a
didn't
working
matter.
title and were like, well, I won't bother learning that.
Totally. I'll never need to say this again. First announced at PlayStation's June 2020 event, the all-new IP from Luminous Productions, previously titled Project Athea, or Arthea, now has a title, and that title is terrible. And it is Forspoken. The action-adventure stars Ella Balinska as the protagonist Frey Holland, facing off against dragons and other colossal beasts in an untamed land. It'll be a PlayStation 5 console exclusive when it launches in 2022, but then it's also coming to Windows PC as well. We didn't see a lot of Forspoken. A lot of Forspoken trailer was Ella here telling us how excited she is to be in Forspoken. But did you like what we saw, Peter?
Yeah, I think she did a very natural presentation as well. Like I was surprised that like whenever they put an actor in front of a thing, it's like I was paid to sit here and read this, but it was like it felt like a really genuine delivery from her as well. So like that was just nice as a note.
Yeah.
What we see is cool. I mean, it's like Steph's video game, right? Like it's like
Totally.
Actually, she does hate when fantasy and modern kind of reality blend. That's like a big faux pas for her. But maybe this is like the right combination of those things. Dragons and a young woman going on an adventure for some reason, wearing a hoodie. She's thrust into this thing.
She does love hoodies.
The gameplay, which we see after this title card, is very quick. But it like initial reaction, cool. Lots of environments. Look at that movement.
It looks exactly like Warframe. That is Warframe movement. That's spinning around, which is very satisfying to
And this vista in particular to me looks very reminiscent of the Final Fantasy where you drive around.
Yep.
Which one was that? 15?
Yeah. I
think it's 15.
The boys.
Beautiful. I hope it has substance. Because I would say the last thing that PlayStation needs is another third-person open world action game.
Totally. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it just looks like reminiscent of Horizon, God of War. I mean, more Horizon than God of War, and definitely Final Fantasy 15 to me. So, yeah, fingers crossed that it's something with a bit of impact, but it could just be one of those things that just is pretty and works and is pretty forgettable.
Yeah, I have such an interesting relationship with Square Enix, I think, as a publisher, where I'm just like, I find that most of their games just don't speak to me, but then when they do, they really speak to me. Like, I don't like 90% of the games that they put out, but the 10% that I do like, I really fall into. There's nothing to go on with this really, except that they just wanted to show off, I guess, what that movement system is, which does look cool. Like, I really like that in Warframe, that zipping around, that kinetic energy. The one thing I didn't like in this trailer was the trailer opens and she just goes, "Is that a motherfucking dragon?" And like, I swear all the time, but there's just something about like hearing that as like the first piece in your trailer. I was just like, oh, that just feels like you threw that in there for no reason. Like, yeah, I don't know. It was just one of those things where I was like, oh, that feels like you're trying to go for something as opposed to like that was a natural swear.
Yeah, yeah. And like, it totally, if that's just lifted out of a cutscene, maybe it does feel natural in the context of the rest of that scene, but to cut in on that, it feels totally out of place. So
it was very jarring.
I was like, what?
Hear that? I'm like, ah.
Particularly like this woman is speaking to us like so eloquently, and then the first word the character says is "fuck."
100%. Yeah, that, like, cause she was great. Yeah. Like, and she was talking about the emotion and the journey the character goes on, that sort of thing, and then it's just, "Is that a motherfucking dragon?" And it's like, all right, okay, well, that's the kind of game this is. Yeah. And then the third thing that came out of the presents, there were lots of things. There were some mobile games and Just Cause heading to mobile, and a lot of stuff that I'm just going to be honest, I didn't care about. But the last thing was that they announced the next step for the Marvel Avengers game, and that is a Black Panther expansion. So we've had Hawkeye come out. Black Panther, it was a cinematic trailer, so we don't really see, how this will play out. But I imagine big open space, lots of enemies. But it was a cool little tease. Black Panther looks really good. And while I'm not currently playing the game, I did hear a lot of really positive feedback about Hawkeye. And while Avengers has its issues at the moment as a live service game, I guess, everything that I've heard about the Hawkeye thing is like, hey, they put a cool story-based thing in here. And it's like they're just continuing the relatively solid single player that they had in the base game. And that might be more of the case for Black Panther.
Yeah, I think like they obviously have the benefit of having the Marvel machine behind them. And I think that will give them the breathing room to have a really long roadmap to get their game in a working order, and with content like this, that seems to get people are really hyped about this one as well. I just saw only positive reaction in the trailer comments on YouTube, and only positive reactions on YouTube are absurd. It's cool that they've got all these characters to lean on to be able to introduce slowly over time. I think as well for me, the biggest negative reaction I had to the game, and I still haven't played it, in the marketing of the game, was that I'm so familiar with the Robert Downeys, the Chris Evanses as the voices, and they are these people to me. And Chadwick. So it's by the time we're seeing them rendered in CG in this game, it's like, these aren't my heroes. But I feel like if now people are getting enough time to spend in there, a lot of those characters are no longer in the MCU. This is the way to interact with them, and they're slowly becoming the familiar version of the character as well. So
yeah, totally. I
think there's an opportunity there for people to fall in love with these characters in the same way they fell in love with the cinema versions of the characters as well. So
yeah, that's a really good point. And the Black Panther suit, I think, looks awesome in this. I think he looks really, really cool. And it could be an interesting place for Avengers to go, I suppose, which is the live service, I guess, is where they're getting a lot of the money. But if you just kept putting out really solid story-based little, expanding that single player, and you pivot to the idea of that's how we support this game is with more like single player content or story based stuff, as opposed to like, hey, we brought in this new character and a new sort of end game for them or something. That seems to be what people are reacting to the most positively. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this goes. I believe Hawkeye was free as well. It was like a free update that came. So I'm not sure what the situation with Black Panther is.
I feel like if they were going to charge for DLC, they will have pivoted that model to be free content updates, at least for the next 12 months, while they're trying to get people back into the ecosystem.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So
that was everything of note, we feel like, for the Square Enix Presents. And then over the weekend, something else of note that was quite disappointing to hear, and that is the Disco Elysium Final Cut is banned in Australia as of the time that we are recording now on Monday morning. Alex Walker from Kotaku reports that the game has been slapped down with a refused classification rating, according to a new listing on the Classifications Board website. Going off the details in the listing, the ban was applied manually by the Classification Board and not through the automated IARC ratings process, which is the thing that like 90% of the games that get banned in Australia just fall afoul of that sort of automated process, and then they need to go back in and just go, oh, actually, like we didn't clarify this, or we ticked the wrong box or something. Yeah. This seems to be people sat down and reviewed this and went, no, we're not going to let this come into the country. The reason for the refused classification is the official report says games 1A, which I assume is referring to Disco Elysium, the computer game is classified refused classification in accordance with the National Classification Code Computer Games Table as computer games that depict, quote, as computer games that, quote, depict, express, or otherwise deal with matters of sex, drug misuse or addiction, crime, cruelty, violence, or revolting or abhorrent phenomena in such a way that they offend against the standards of morality, decency, and propriety generally accepted by reasonable adults to the extent that they should not be classified. Which, to me, is like that is completely just a like, won't somebody think of the children style, like
it's just so non-specific. It's like it's just a massive net they cast out over this thing, which feels like so like such a knee-jerk reaction as opposed to a considered reaction. A lot of the times that these games get banned, or back in the day before we had R and they were banned because they would have been R, was like they would specify like individual mechanics or ideas in the game that pushed it across that line. And this is such a broad fucking stroke. My initial reaction was this has to be an IARC thing. And then to read that it wasn't, I was like, how?
Particularly because it's like, this is the conversation we have every time this comes up. It's like, we have an R18 rating. So I don't understand. Like, I've played about a third of Disco Elysium, and I was really looking forward to getting this sort of like fully voiced version, expanded quest, and actually doing the whole game. But the third of the game that I've played, some truly terrible things happen in this game. The main character is vile and sad and not someone you would ever want to emulate, but is also fascinating. The writing is incredible. The world in no way is like, this is a good place to be, but it is so, there are so many other video games I've played where I'm like, worse stuff happens in those games than this. It's just like to me, this hits the the revolting or abhorrent phenomena. Sort of like use of like, they're just offended that something like this, because it's kind of like a repulsive world to be in, but that's the point of it. And also, as an adult, I should just be allowed to choose whether or not I want to be in a repulsive world. Like, why are you telling me that this character who is an alcoholic, like, the TV shows and movies deal with alcoholism all the time. The character, and at no point in the game, when a character drinks, am I like, this is a good decision that this character's making, and this is a decision that I should apply to my life as well. Like, the drinking and drug use in this game makes you never want to drink or do drugs.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I don't know what could possibly be in this director's cut that didn't catch the original. I don't even know if the original got classified.
It didn't, because the original was Steam only.
Yep.
Yeah, so it didn't need it. But what now could be a worry is that because this game is being classified, the classification now gets applied to the Steam version. That basically they just need to send a notification to Steam to go like, hey, we've classified this game now and you can't sell it. So I don't know what that means about, like, because this is supposed to be a free update for everybody who already owns the game. I own the game on Steam, and it would have just come as a free update. So yeah, I don't really know where they go from here, other than
Look, I don't think that the classification board is going to get the old version removed, because they would have to classify this cut and the original version individually. And I don't think they would go out of their way to classify the other one, even though they know basically what it's going to be.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like, as a government institution, that's where they're going to spend their time, which is like a good way to be under the radar there. But you're so right about this just feeling like, again, gamers are left feeling like we're not treated like adults because we can't enjoy things that are dark or like disgusting, like themes wise. So
totally
travesty.
And the difficult thing as well is that it feels like it's probably a harder fix for the game, because it's not like other games that we've seen where they go, okay, like you're using a stim pack or something, but the stim pack is actually called Speed or whatever.
Yeah.
Then they just patch the name of the thing to be like, it's actually bead. And so you just did a bead hit. And it's all fine.
They'll change the shape of the syringe to a little capsule or a can that you drink.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas this is like there is drug use and alcohol use, but it's kind of like baked in at a story level. It's baked in at a character level. It's just like infuses the whole world of that game. So I don't really know what you change about that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. But again, it's just like insane that this is happening. So we may need to find other ways to play this video game. Other ways to play video games in general. You don't always have your move sticks lying around when you want to use PSVR. And that's probably a good thing, because the PlayStation Move had its time, and that time I feel like it's probably past. And what we've got ahead of us is the new PlayStation 5 VR that Sony announced a couple of weeks ago, and we got a look at the controllers for that system. This is from the Sony blog following the recent reveal of our next generation virtual reality system for PS5. I'm excited to unveil more details about the new controller that will play a critical role in providing gamers with the VR experience we're working to deliver. Our new VR controller speaks to our mission of achieving a much deeper sense of presence and stronger feeling of immersion in VR experiences. It will build upon the innovation we introduced with the DualSense wireless controller, which changed how games feel on PS5 by unlocking a new way to tap into a sense of touch. Now we're bringing that innovation to VR gaming. So these controls look very much like the Oculus style controls, but they will have the sort of haptic feedback that the DualSense does, and the adaptive triggers as well.
Yeah. They look pretty slick.
Yep.
Hopefully they work really one-to-one, because these controllers for VR systems have worked well for at least the last iteration across HTC and Oculus, and the Steam VR as well. Apparently, never picked that one up, but what's the Steam one called again?
The Vive.
No, that's HTC
There's the Vive. HTC. There's the Vive. There's the Oculus.
Steam one? Index.
Oh, the Index. Yeah. Yes, the Valve Index.
Yeah. Valve Index, Steam VR. These controllers look like they're pretty ergonomic and comfy. They look futuristic, which is fun. and the only thing weird about them in my mind is that they're black, not white.
Yeah.
Like they for your PlayStation 5, right? So
Yeah, totally.
that's an odd choice, but they'll sit. These will sit nicely as like a weird piece of art on the shelf somewhere.
Yeah.
Until you get up close, and like, are there buttons and triggers on that thing?
I'm excited for this because, I mean, those Move controllers really were holding back what was possible to do with VR. The two things holding back the PSVR, which is, like, admittedly a great piece of tech, has a massive install base. I think is actually the most popular VR system, and got a lot of people into it. There were lots of wires and the breakout box, that whole setup. That's gone because there's going to be one cable connecting to the console. The controllers, which were really limiting hand tracking and that sort of thing, and the fact that you needed a camera to be able to, like, you need to set up the PlayStation camera to track. The tracking for the PS5 VR is going to be in the headset. The controllers have that thing where it knows where your fingers are. As soon as you start holding it, it detects where your fingers are. And I think it's really cool that it has the DualSense triggers. That's really, like, the adaptive triggers is very, very cool that's in this, because anything that is immersive, like, even this to me is even more immersive if you feel like if you're playing, let's say, a shooter and you hold it out and you have that click, is going to be even better than it is in the controller in VR.
Yeah. I mean, you know how I feel about the adaptive triggers, but I feel like they could feel more organic in a VR scenario than they do in like a normal scenario. And like it's cool that they have the hand finger tracking stuff as well, because that's the coolest thing about the Oculus Quest to me, is that I actually don't need to pick those things up if I want to do some basic navigation. But I can see the virtual version of them as well, like on the heads-up display. So it's all, there's some cool stuff in VR, and like, PlayStation, I think, the first PSVR did really well in terms of unit sales. So I think they're a really key part of the VR ecosystem being successful, because they're getting the units out there in at least in the PSVR, a really affordable way, the original PSVR, a really affordable way for people who have a PlayStation console. So just to get enough units out there to inspire game makers to make more games because there's a player base, that's only good for the industry, the VR side of the industry. So.
And Fourth Reaper in the chat says, good to see most VR controllers have pretty much the same button layout now as well. Yeah. And I think that's another really big thing that you go, like, as a developer, you don't need to account for a completely different controller system if you want to put your game on PlayStation 5. You don't need to necessarily make that choice of, okay, it's going to be a pretty big port job to take it from the Quest to the PS5 or vice versa. It's actually just going to be like, simplifying, I don't know how this actually works, but it's going to be much closer to being able to just put your game on all VR platforms, which means you don't need to make any sort of hard choices and limit the amount of people that are going to be able to play it. And the word is as well that the reason we're seeing these, because they've said that it's probably coming next year. They confirmed that it is not coming this year in this post, but the reason that we're seeing these controllers, even though it's quite early, is that apparently they sent out dev kits and they were like, these controllers are going to leak anyway. So let's just actually own the news cycle for a day and do it ourselves.
Yeah, and I think someone, maybe Spazros, pointed out as well that they're not necessarily final, and I think that's all part of like them sending out these dev kits, is that devs will get their hands on them and there might be some adjustments based on developer feedback as well. So I think they're only going to get more user-friendly from this next 12 months.
Yeah. But it's cool. It's like they're definitely doubling down and going, no, we are committing to it. So VR is sticking around for a while longer, as is Evo, who's the fighting game tournament whose future was in jeopardy last year, not only because of COVID, but because of a bunch of behind-the-scenes controversy that meant that the Evo last year was actually shut down. Owen S. Good from Polygon reports that Sony Interactive Entertainment will acquire the Evo Evolution Champion Series, the fighting game tournament known as Evo for almost 2 decades, through a partnership with another esports venture the company's announced on Thursday. Additionally, Evo will return from a year's absence with an online tournament this August called Evo Online. Fighting games Fighting Games Premier Championship event will now be owned and operated by a joint venture between Sony and RTS, which is an esports venture whose investors include the Endeavor Talent Agency. So EVO is now a not PlayStation, but a Sony joint.
Yeah. I guess that's cool. I mean, none of us are particularly into fighting games or the championship circuit, but I know Evo has done pretty well as far as like esports tournaments are concerned. That's not run by Valve or Riot, or Blizzard. So like, I think Evo is kind of a standout in the crowd of being this thing that's like somehow stood up to the giants and been able to compete on the same kind of level.
Totally.
They are part of the Capcom, the world tournament. Like they're a part of the qualification into that,
like
as
a
well.
stop in that. Yeah.
So it's like it's a really important part of the fighting game scene. And it's interesting that Sony is involved now. I don't know whether that'll mean that games like Smash and I don't know what's Xbox got, Killer Instinct or something. Will be pushed down the rung. I doubt it because like games like Smash still pull a massive audience. I don't think Smash is in this year's tournament. Whether that's from what I read.
No, the tournament is Tekken 7, Street Fighter 5 Championship Edition, Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, and Guilty Gear Strive.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
But I will say on that, because I did see a lot of people concerned about whether or not like Smash would be. I think it's one of these things, you don't buy this and then just turn it into only like PlayStation games. That seems like counterintuitive. But also, technically, it's owned by Sony Interactive Entertainment, not PlayStation. So that line is like it's less weird that I guess you can have Nintendo games at an event that's actually a Sony event, not a PlayStation event, I suppose.
Totally. And I feel like that was something they considered before they made the purchase as well, as to like which part of the company owns this so that it doesn't feel weird, or that Nintendo don't want to not be involved because it's the PlayStation Evo. It's the Sony Evo that Nintendo has Smash in. So
it's what I like about this is that these last two stories are like Sony carving out their niche, I suppose. Like, there's been a lot of conversation about like how do you compete with something like Game Pass? Like Microsoft is buying studios, and these two things are like, okay, so Sony are doubling down on esports and they're doubling down on VR, and these are two things that Microsoft basically never talk about. So these are two categories of like, we're servicing the video game community in a different way with this stuff, which I think is smart. So we'll see how this turns out. Just a little final Sony news here. They're actually giving away 10 games as well. It was a big Sony news dump over the last couple of days. Polygon reports that Horizon Zero Dawn plus 9 other indie games will be free to everyone with a PlayStation 4 or a PlayStation 5 beginning next month, as Sony expands its efforts to support folks keeping safe and socially distant in the final stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition will be free between April 19th and May 14th, and you do not need a PlayStation Plus subscription to access the game. And then from March 25th, players will also get access to 9 more games. So that is Abzu, Enter the Gungeon, Res Infinite, Subnautica, and The Witness for the PlayStation 4 or the PlayStation 5. And then Astrobot Rescue Mission, Moss, Thumper, and Paper Beast for PlayStation VR. Those 9 games will be available to sort of redeem to your account until April 22nd as well.
Yeah. Very, very cool. I believe all of them, if not most of them, have been PlayStation Gold games in the past. So a lot of people who are very in the PlayStation ecosystem will already have all these on their console, or at least own the digital ticket to them. But these are available for free for people who don't even have PlayStation Plus. So it's like, it's a really good incentive to go out and get yourself a PlayStation 5. You'll get this lovely suite of games to install on it. Yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's just a really nice little like icing on the cake to have these games that, you know, PlayStation are reasonably aware that they're not going to sell a heap of these titles over the next few years. They're kind of just a touch past their day. Horizon's still selling on PC, which is great. So I think Horizon is a really big ticket item here. Like, it's a original IP, huge game. Really exciting thing to have for free when you buy yourself a PlayStation. So it's great. It's great for gamers. More games.
Yep. More games. That's what you want. And then the final story we've got here is the 2021 nominees for the World Video Game Hall of Fame. So Cash Marshall from Polygon reports that the Strong National Museum of Play has announced the 2021 finalists for the World Video Game Hall of Fame. Pete, I'm going to read these games to you.
Yep.
And I just want you to tell me, so that they generally do 4 to 6 games go in each year.
Yep.
I want you to tell me which ones you would put in. So the nominees are Animal Crossing, Call of Duty, Farmville, FIFA International Soccer, Guitar Hero, Mattel Football, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Pole Position, Portal, StarCraft, Tron, and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Okay. Of those titles that I think in 2021 should be in the Hall of Fame as games that kind of stood the test of time.
Yep.
Call of Duty, Flight Simulator, effectively FIFA with EA Soccer.
Yep.
And probably StarCraft.
Yeah. I agree with those as well. I would add in Portal as being an iconic game.
Yeah, it's just
like
not.
it's less
lasting series. It has a legacy of not even design, because no one's done Portals again.
That's what I was going to say. It's like I was like, why would I add it in there? It's not like it's inspired. It's probably, I mean, it's definitely inspired a bunch of people, but you haven't seen Portals as being this thing in the same way as like aim down sights was something that just like took off. But that's the sort of like, I guess, emotional pick there. It is funny because, I mean, admittedly, the Hall of Fame has only been around for a few years. But when I read this list, I was like, what, like Call of Duty, FIFA, and StarCraft and not in the Video Game Hall of Fame already? Like, what are we, like, how are we still adding? Let's just add all the games that have come out, and then every year do everything up until like 10 years ago, and then play catch up once a year from there, because the fact that those games are not in there yet, it's like we're never going to get to a point where, you know, the Outer Wilds is going to get in this. Everyone's going to be dead before we reach
totally
2020.
It's hard as well because, like, in their time, they're all brilliant games. But if part of the story stands the test of time, it's like you can't put something in there until it's been around for 30 years.
Yeah, totally.
Which Guitar Hero is not.
Yeah, Guitar Hero is interesting because, again, it
dominated the scene for a decade.
Yeah, and it's like it inspired some not spin-offs, but like it's such a specific thing that it's like if you can't really make another one of those unless you're just making that again. There was Rock Band, there was Guitar Hero, and there was Guitar Smith, and then DJ, the closest spin-offs we've got is like that remix game that's sort of come out, that sort of thing. So yeah. Anyway, we'll see what gets inducted. The final picks for 2021 will be announced on Thursday, May 6th. So we'll see who makes the cut then. I wonder if you're not eligible again afterwards. I wonder if Animal Crossing doesn't make it if they can no longer be nominated.
Oh.
Because that would be harsh.
Then they all need to go in.
And they all need to just go in. Yep. All
like,
of them.
Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? And like, I fucking love Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. Don't get me wrong. Is it a like world-changing game?
Yeah.
Not really.
No. No.
And Farmville can fuck off as well, because
Farmville, that's the one in there where I'm like we should not reward people who ruined the industry. Like that should not be the prize for introducing microtransactions and trash games. Anyway, Peter, do you have anything else to say to the lovely people?
I have nothing to say except I hope you all have a lovely week, and we'll see you a few times throughout the week.
Yep, I think we'll see you on Wednesday next. So until then, let's back it out.
Bye.